Господине амбасадор, ви благодарам за вашето присуство во ТВМ телевизија, во студиото на ТВМ телевизија, и ви благодарам што се озвивте на поканата, на нашата покана секако да ја посетите нашата телевизиска куќа при вашата посета на секторот за внатрешни работи и велосипедската единица во нашиот град, што е друго денес на агендата кај вас во Охрид.
Well, thank you very much for hosting me today, and it's wonderful to be back here in Ohrid. In my 4 years here in Macedonia, I've enjoyed many great visits here. Indeed, some of my most memorable times have been here in Ohrid. As you said this morning, I started out with a bike ride with the bicycle police on a beautiful day. What could be bad about that? And indeed, some of my favorite things, my most memorable things during my time in Macedonia have happened here. About 18 months ago, it was a real great honor for me to reopen the Church of Bogorodica Perivepta with the restored frescoes, and that was a project that the United States, along with the Ministry of Culture, had worked on for about 7 years, and it was a real wonderful experience both to visit that site as the work was going on, but then seeing the magnificence of that. Of those frescoes, and a real cultural treasure not only for Ohrid in Macedonia but for the entire world. So I really enjoy coming here, and it's great to be back and at your television station.
Така. Вашата посета ќе искористим исто така да одговорите на неколку актуелни прашања. Македонија се наоѓа пред историски референдум. Дали мислите дека имаме демократски капацитет?
Of course Macedonia has the democratic capacity to make this decision. Of course, it's not an easy decision, but your country has been faced with issues throughout its independence. Mm-hmm. This is, of course, an important turning point. It's a big decision about people's future. People should understand what the agreement is, understand the consequences, the options that it opens or closes, and make their decision. But the citizens of this country are perfectly capable of doing this. They voted for independence in 1991. They supported the Ohrid Framework Agreement. They've had some difficult decisions, and of course, they are perfectly capable of making this decision, their sovereign decision, themselves.
Доцна синоќа, лидерот на најголемата опозициона партија во земјава, ВМРО ДПМН, Христијан Мицкоски, на пресконференција го велодени ставот на партијата. Не повика на бојкот, туку се повика на сопствената совест на граѓаните. Сега, како вие го толкувате овој така наречен неутрален став на ВМРО ДПМН?
Well, what I would say is the following. I would say I'm not going to comment specifically on what Mr. Mickoski said last night, because our position on this really, our view hasn't changed. This is a historic opportunity for Macedonia. Of course, the United States has been working with this country to help it develop into a prosperous, secure, resilient democracy that is integrated into the Western family of institutions, into Europe, into the EU, and into NATO. We supported Macedonia's invitation to NATO in last July. So we obviously want to see, we are supportive of the Prespa agreement. There's no hidden thing about that. But what's important is that this is a decision for the citizens of this country. And they have the opportunity to say, to vote for, to vote against, mm-hmm. and to make their views on this historic occasion known. And so they should. We believe this is the democratic right that people have fought for a long time, and that they should exercise their voice, because in some ways, if they don't, they're allowing other citizens to act for them. That's the reality of the situation. So it's an important opportunity, and we do think citizens should go out there and exercise their right to vote and to vote for or against.
Македонија се наоѓа пред тешка одлука, пред сериозна одлука, треба да направи тежок компромис, за тоа колку е тежок компромисот е и самата формулација на прашањето, референдумското прашање. Сега ме интересира какво ќе биде значењето за влезот на Македонија во НАТО ако од грчка страна не се испочитува договорот од Преспа?
Well, there's several elements of the question you just asked there. Yes, it is a difficult compromise. It's been a difficult compromise for both sides, and it took a while for the sides to come together and to come to an agreement that addressed some of the primary concerns of Macedonia, as well as the primary concerns of Greece. And so I'm not surprised if people find it difficult. It is difficult, and that's why it's an important decision. It's difficult because if it was easy, it would have been done a long time ago. And in any decision like this, you have a yes or a no. On the list of options is not perfect, unfortunately. With regard to Greece and the fear that people might have that we vote for this referendum and somehow Greece may not reciprocate. Well, I would observe two things. One is, I think you've seen a very strong commitment on the part of the Greek government in the face of significant opposition to support the Prespa agreement and to see it through the ratification process that Greece will go through. If it is not ratified by both sides, well, then there's no agreement. You would go to the situation ante. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I don't think that's people's intention. But that if there's no agreement, there's no agreement. If there's no ratification, there's no ratification. What would NATO do? Well, right now that agreement remains part of the conditions for NATO membership. So I guess you'd be back at square one.
Кога зборуваме за поканата на Македонија за членство во НАТО, колкаво е значењето за безбедносната ситуација во државата и за надворешната безбедност, за она што се случува во окружувањето на нашата држава, меѓутоа и за внатрешните безбедносни моменти?
Well, I think I would look at it at two ways. One is, I think, and I've come to appreciate this during my time in Macedonia, that there is a lingering sense of insecurity in the country if they look around the region. And that they haven't realized their aspirations of integration into NATO and into Europe. I think what NATO brings is a strong sense of security and stability. With regard to your neighbors, who over the course of 100 years have been involved in various things in this territory, in this country. And you can't change your neighbors. That history is its history. But by joining NATO, your neighbors are not just neighbors anymore. They're your allies. And these allies are pledged by treaty to defend your territorial integrity, your sovereignty, and your independence. And I think that's a big change in the history of this country, of Macedonia, if you look back, say, to the end of the Ottoman Empire. And I think it also provides a sense of security within your borders, that no one's going to come and change things, that you will not have the experience that, say, your grandmother may have had, where she lived in 5 or 7 different countries without changing her address. So I think it does provide a greater sense of security and stability.
Господин амбасадор, накратко за криминалот и корупцијата. Мислите дека се сузбиваат на нивото кое што се очекува и со брзината која што се очекува, со оглед на тоа дека вие сте впрочем единствен странски дипломат кој што обелодени една афера? Во државната изборна комисија, колку се сеќавам.
Well, I think establishing a fair, independent judicial system, combating corruption, and more broadly, promoting the rule of law is absolutely essential for the future of this country, no matter what else happens. It is, I think, if you look in reports, you don't have to look at me, people remain very dissatisfied on this front. It's a challenge for these systems. Now, they're not going to change overnight, but I think what people probably want more than anything else is a sense that impunity will no longer be tolerated. Look, every country in the world deals with crime and corruption. My country does too. The question is, what do the institutions do about it? And so I think people are looking for more. Your friends and partners are looking for more. Why? Lack of rule of law is not only an issue of good governance, it is a hindrance on the economy, and it's a security vulnerability. And so it's important that not only for your own development as a democracy, but also for your partnership with other countries that you address these issues. And people want to see more, and that's going to be something that's looked at very closely by your friends and allies and partners over the next period of time.
За самиот крај, за исходот на референдумот, кои се вашите очекувања? Дали сте оптимист?
I would not be in the business of diplomacy if I was not an optimist. You do believe in helping resolve issues and fostering partnership and moving forward. I remember a quote from Senator George Mitchell, an American senator, who was the negotiator of the Easter Accords in Northern Ireland, a very difficult situation for many, many years, where many people lost their lives. And he said it was a frustrating process. I failed for 699 straight days, but I knew I only had to get it right on one day. And so I think right now I'm an optimist because I think there is a sense in the country that people do want to move on from having this yoke of the name agreement around their neck, blocking or slowing progress. And whether people like the agreement, I don't think people want to have to change the name of the state or to modify the name of the state, but I think they also look at what doors this opens for the future of their families and their children, of trying to create to make their country part of a greater union and part of a space of hope and prosperity. And I think that's what everybody wants for their families. And so I am optimistic. I think the people of Macedonia took a courageous step in 1991, and I think they can. As you asked in the beginning, do they have the democratic capacity? Absolutely, of course. The Macedonians, the citizens of this country, have plenty of capacity, and they'll make the decision that is right for them.
Ви благодарам, господин амбасадор, ви благодарам за учеството во Дневникот на ТВ телевизија.
Thank you very much for having me and welcoming me back in Orhut.